Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the One Hood Power Hour. I am your host, Royce Jones. A lot has happened since our last program, so we're very excited to be back with you this evening, talking with you about the stories that matter and with the people who care. Now, remember, if you have any questions or any feedback, you can communicate with our guests. Just drop your comments in the chat wherever you're watching, and we'll do our best to make sure we get to those. By the way, One Hood Power focuses on building power by reaching out to our communities who have been traditionally excluded, forgotten, and under-resourced. While we engage all voters, we specifically focus on the policies and platforms to improve the quality of life for our Black, people of the global majority, disabled, queer, youth, immigrant, and Muslim communities. On tonight's show, we want to talk a little bit about Pittsburgh and how we are being impacted by the federal executive orders and so on. We also want to get into what it's like to live here, work here, buy a home here for everyone. Our first guest is known as a global advocate for the aging population. Laura Poskin is a gerontologist who started her career in media. She previously served on the transition team for Governor Josh Shapiro and is now working on the launch of something called Age Friendly Pennsylvania. Hey, Laura.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us. So talk to us a little bit about Age Friendly and what that work looks like.
Sure. So Age Friendly is all about making our region more inclusive and respectful of all ages. You mentioned that I'm a gerontologist. We're really focused on making our world better for a population that's only growing older. And in doing so, it's actually going to make it better for everyone. So we think about the built environment. So things like our sidewalks, our transportation, our housing, the physical features of the environment, and also our social environment, opportunities to work, connect with one another, to participate. And again, we think that if they're made better for a population that's growing older, it's going to be better for people of all ages. So you're thinking about that sidewalk. If it's going to be better for someone who might be using a mobility device, it's going to be better for a new parent who's pushing a stroller. It's going to be better for me, a 42-year-old who needs a little extra time to cross the street.
Where's your footprint? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Our footprint is Allegheny County. So we have about 120 partner organizations that are caring about making the region more inclusive and respectful of all ages. But like you said, we are anticipating the announcement from the governor about an age-friendly Pennsylvania. And really, that's his commitment to a population that is growing older, which actually our region is the second oldest in the whole country. And we're second to Palm Beach, Florida, which is a different situation. A lot of people who are moving down there for the first time have a lot of resources, moving into communities that are new to them. I always think about where we live. It's a lot of older adults who have lived in the same home for years and years. And that's just a different experience.
How do those numbers come about? Does that mean that, like younger people are leaving and that because of that, older people are staying and that makes our region older? Is that what that is?
Right. I mean, I think some of it is the out-migration. Absolutely. We just happen to have an older population. That's who lives here.
Yeah.
About 20% of Allegheny County residents are 65 and older. And we think that is cool. And it's a demographic. Might as well lean into that. Like, that's who lives here. And there's so many opportunities to connect with neighbors of all ages. And we're really stronger because of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're all about.
Sorry, I keep doing that. It's okay. No, our ideas are like dinging at the same time. They're like ringing.
Go ahead.
I'll let you go. No, I'll let you go.
Well, I was going to say, and this kind of tees up to some of the cuts that are happening right now, is that we're all about the idea of helping people of all ages age within their community as long as possible. There's been a movement for several decades now of a movement away from like institutional care, and that was especially prevalent during COVID, like people wanting to remain at home as long as possible. And we, thinking about age friendly, it's like we know that people don't want to age in place sitting in their lazy boy recliner in their house. It's not aging in place. They want to age in their community. They want to access their community. They want to be able to go places. They want to be able to be with the people that they care about and participate in the community their whole life. So that's really what we're all about. And we're always pushing the idea of aging in community.
Yeah. And what does that experience look like for a lot of people right now? Is there anything or any issues in particular that you have analyzed that you think need to be addressed?
Yeah, so right now we're looking at a lot of cuts to social safety net programs. I know we're going to get into that, but I'll just say one thing that we're really focused on is Medicaid. Our founding partner is Southwestern Pennsylvania Partnership for Aging. It's an interest group that's been around for about 40 years, really advocating for older adults with older adults. And there are a lot of things to focus on right now, and they are laser focused on Medicaid. And it's not just that Medicaid is something that helps so many people of all ages age well and be healthy, stay healthy, and have access to health care. And actually, so in Allegheny County, about 250,000 people rely on Medicaid for their health care. Of that, about 40% are kids, actually, children. About 40% are children. And then about 33% of people are older adults, people who are pregnant, or people with disabilities. So, you might need healthcare at any point in your life for whatever reason, and you can access Medicaid. You might be someone who is living in a nursing home at the end of your life, and you've spent down your life savings, and then Medicaid takes care of you. And so right now there are not, we're really calling on people to protect Medicaid. It's really important. It hasn't, there've been folks are saying Medicaid is fine, but they're going to be making cuts, and we anticipate cuts to Medicaid. So that's one thing. Should I keep going?
Yeah, sure.
I think we also wanted to talk about Social Security. Now, I'm not an expert in Social Security, but Social Security is also something that so many people rely on for their financial well-being and, their later in life. And so, oftentimes it's thought of as a three-legged stool, like in order to be prepared for retirement, that you have access to Social Security, to some sort of employer retirement. It used to be a pension, but that's really rare now. And then the third is personal savings. But now we know that a lot of people are solely reliant upon the first. So just that they're teetering on a one-leg stool of just needing Social Security, relying on that. And that's something that you pay into your whole life, and you're waiting, and you need that money. And I know we also have a disabilities expert on, and there are plenty of people who access Social Security also who are living with disabilities. And I hope that she talks about that later. But, for those are two essential, it's always been, we've relied on them being there, and now there's uncertainty. And okay, and so I can keep going, or do you
would you give me one more? What you got? If you're on a roll, speak it.
The other thing that, and I really appreciate you all asking us to come on, because I think Medicaid, people are talking about Medicaid, people are starting to talk about Social Security because it impacts them. Something that happened at the end of last week is deeply disturbing to us. It was announced that there were a lot of cuts to human services. So I think it was kind of coming through on my New York Times alert, like 10,000 people laid off from human services.
Yeah.
Well, they basically dismantled what's called the Administration for Community Living. And this gets into this whole movement like people wanting to age in their communities. It's built up that we have this Administration for Community Living, ACL, that administers money that comes down to the states for things like Meals on Wheels, for things like if your mom or your grandmother or your grandfather needs a bath, needs help bathing, needs help grooming, any in-home care, senior centers, all of that money comes down from the ACL, the Administration for Community Living, and it was dismantled last week. And this is not being talked about except for among nerds like me in this particular space. And it's deeply concerning. And that, people rely on meals, people rely on, social participation in a senior center. These are things that all of these things that I've talked about, it comes down to like, who is responsible for this? Mm-hmm. And should this be a right? Should these things be a right, or are they a luxury for some people? And we all deserve access to these essential services. So
yeah, I think so that agency is that a like a federal agency?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a federal agency that sends money to the states, and then from the states to state programs. Is that how that works?
Yeah. So in 1965, the Older Americans Act came into effect, and that established what we call the aging network. So everywhere, if you're an older adult, you are protected through that you have access to what's called an area agency on aging. So Allegheny County has an area agency on aging that is really fabulous and offers a lot of services. And that money, we're actually in Pennsylvania, we're lucky because some of it is the lottery money, because you sometimes see that like keep scratching, and that's great. And we rely on these dollars that have been, my whole lifetime and most of my parents' lifetime. And since 1965, these have been available and really helped people live at home as long as possible. And without them, it means that families have got to step up in a whole new way. So like, you're working during the day, try to now step up and be a full-time caregiver for someone. I mean, certainly people have always been caregivers, and you're a caregiver whether you're full-time or not, but there's going to be a lot of impacts on, what does that look like especially for women who might have to quit their jobs to take care of a loved one. This is something that definitely will impact older adults, but it's also going to impact the economy, like the people that are being employed to make these services happen. And it's really disturbing.
So are people being immediately impacted by that, the dismantling of that program?
That's a good question. And I don't think it's immediate, but the people, I was just talking to my contact at the Department of Aging, and she said, yeah, the person who's in charge of dispersing the money to the states was fired. So it's just like, so where is that gonna live? It's not that and the Older Americans Act money, and I'm not trying to get in the weeds, but like that it needs to be reauthorized. And so it's frightening that the people, and these are people too, that deeply care about others. Like, you don't go into this work without like having a real passion for it. And so, all of those people lost their jobs. And now it's trying to figure out where this is going to be situated. And it'll probably, a lot of it will probably go to Medicare and Medicaid services, but there's not someone that knows this is how we get it to each of the states. And this is, and it ends up being, it seems like something that's really big, but then it means that there's not a meal to be delivered to somebody who's waiting for it on the other end.
Yeah.
It's, and that's really hard. I will also say that we're also thinking about some state level issues, like like transportation, PRT, our regional transit is facing a lot of cuts, and that's actually at the state level. So some of these things, and certainly there probably will be cuts at the federal level, but at the state level, we need to make sure that we're advocating for public transit options. 25% of Pittsburgh households don't have access to a car.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that that's available.
Yeah, and with all of these concerns that you've expressed, I mean, what would your message be to the leaders and decision makers in DC who are calling the shots on some of this stuff?
Protect Medicaid, protect Social Security, protect the Older Americans Act, and the things that allow us to live in our homes as long as possible. That's what people want and need. It's the smart thing to do. I mean, this idea of what they're doing, just going in and dismantling whole departments. Certainly, we're not saying that these services are perfect. There are wait lists for some of these services already. Our population is only growing older. Like, we need to make an investment in this. And the fact that they're going in and basically like totaling the car instead of like, oh yeah, there's some things wrong with it, like let's do some diagnostics and make some fixes. Absolutely. Let's like invest in those fixes. Like, let's not total the car. Like, why are we doing that? And it's really people's lives, and it's ultimately like, what do you value? Right?
Yeah, and to throw it back to your work at Age Friendly and trying to get an age friendly Pennsylvania up and running, with all of those things in mind, what do you think your I suppose your strongest goal right now and mission in that work, with all of these concerns and all of these things that are changing? I mean, how do you approach that? And you don't even really know what the status of any of these programs or federal, government departments are even going to look like, where funding is coming from. How do you even do that? It's such a scramble.
How is anybody doing anything right now? It's so hard. But I think what we're trying to do is tell stories of how people are impacted.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of our work that we do is resident led, and we try to elevate resident voices. And we're trying, if you have a story about how Medicaid has impacted your life, those are stories that need to be told, to our senators. Like, you need to call your senators and make sure that they know those stories. Especially Senator McCormick is on the aging committee, he's new to the Senate, but we need to make sure that, and also, I mean, it's a fine line between, we need to be paying attention to all of these things. We're trying to figure out, like, how do we make sure that we get this in the new, like the fact that the ACL, the Administration for Community Living, is dismantled. There's so many things to focus on right now.
Yeah.
And then there are things about the tariffs and the, whatever the current news cycle is, Greenland, and there's so many things.
Yeah.
But we have to also be focused on the really good work that is happening, like that we're doing really amazing work in communities and helping people collaborate and think about aging in a positive way. And that there are, we have to make sure that, like, older adults are a real asset in our community. And, we have to make sure that the safety nets are there still. And we just need to make sure that that we are really leaning into the vibrancy of a multi-generational population. So anyway, I don't know if I don't even know if I answered your question. It's hard.
Yeah.
There's a lot to focus on, and we have to remain steady in our commitments, and while also trying to keep one another informed and be good allies to other communities that are going through so much right now.
Yeah, and I think you pointed out something important too, which is, the fact that there are a lot of things that are in the news cycle right now that are scary, but it's almost like, and this is just my opinion, this is not a fact, but it almost feels as if the people in charge of the government, they are signing these executive orders, they're doing all of these things, and it's sending shockwaves throughout the media and consequently to us at home, whatever. And so it's so easily to be distracted by that, because there are very real things. Some of this stuff could be performative. Some of it might have real consequences, but there are definitely things that are happening that are not in the news cycle, that aren't punchy, or like hot button topics that are should be making headlines. And so we're being lost to all of these other things that are happening, like the dismantling of this department that you brought to our attention today. So I'm glad we have people like you and your organization, all of our other guests who are and us, because we're on it too, keeping our our pulse on what's happening, so we can inform people, because it's easy to get distracted, and I feel like there's a lot of distraction tactics going on.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
How can people get in contact with you, by the way, so they can keep tabs on all of this?
Absolutely. So we're on social media at Age Friendly PGH. So and we're on most channels. And our website is agefriendlypgh.org. We have a wonderful newsletter that goes out every month that really compiles the latest. And we also have some resources that are on our website. We have a learning hub that includes is that backwards for you?
Maybe? No, I'm seeing it right. Yeah.
Are you seeing it right? Okay.
Yep.
It's this essential numbers magnet. And so you can download it. It's an actual magnet that you can put on, a refrigerator or something. But these phone numbers are really important. There's one to our area agency on aging, which I mentioned. It's called Senior Line. Thank you for putting that in the chat. It's 412-350-5460. But anyway, there's also like the Social Security Administration. If you have questions about Medicare, Medicaid, it's just a really good, quick resource, and we'd be happy to send some to One Hood if you would like some. And that's that things like that are available on our website. We also have a really cool image library if you're looking to update your images and make them more age inclusive. Free pictures to download and share.
Nice. Yeah, for sure. And we can also for people who want that immediately, screenshot that too, that magnet. Go ahead and screenshot that, and yeah, let's talk offline about getting some of those magnets.
That'd be great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us and sharing all of your insight. I'm sure we'll be staying in contact.
Please do.
Yes. Please do. All right, have a good one.
Thanks, you too.
So everyone, our next guest is Marin Exler. Marin is a volunteer with pro-democracy movement March on Harrisburg. For the past 4 years, she's helped lead MOH's People in Organizing campaigns for ranked choice voting in Pennsylvania, along with supporting money out initiatives such as the gift ban and foreign influenced corporation bill. Let's everybody welcome Marin. Hey, Marin.
Hey. Hi, Royce.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. I'm well. So first of all, let's just jump right into it. What is NPA corruption, and what's your main focus with that?
So March on Harrisburg at NPA Corruption is a pro-democracy, anti-corruption movement built by and for Pennsylvanians to pass laws that are by and for the people instead of moneyed interests.
Okay. All right. And what's a little bit about the work that you guys are currently focused on, by the way? With all of these things, I know we probably touched on some of it with our
Right.
first guest. So yeah, what is work looking like for you?
Yeah, so March on Harrisburg has a 23-point platform that's categorized in two sections: money in, or people in, and money out.
Okay.
Not the other way around. It's currently the other way around. But many of the different campaign platforms are focused on different policy initiatives that would fundamentally change the way we vote, including ranked choice voting, or fundamentally change the way that we participate in elections and the way that the rich and the ultra rich are able to influence elections as well.
Okay, and is that where the gift ban comes into play here?
Yes. Yeah.
Talk to us about that? What is that all about?
Yeah, so the gift ban, Pennsylvania is currently one of 3 states in the country where there's no limit on how much lobbyists can gift to public officials. So what that means is that, what from some real life examples, 2 summers ago, the Pittsburgh Symphony paid $15,000 to take 2 senators on a trip to Europe. And Senate Majority Leader Joe Pittman received $3,000 in golf clubs last year as a gift from lobbyists. So basically, lobbyists for different industries are able to meet with senators, meet with representatives, and say, thanks for having that meeting, Senator. Here's some very premium golf clubs. Also, by the way, we'd love this law to be passed if you happen to also support it.
Okay. So kickbacks, basically.
It's basically legalized bribery. It's actually written into the Constitution of the state that officials can receive gifts. And sometimes when we meet with legislators, one of the things we hear from them is that these gifts don't influence the way they vote at all.
Okay. So, so how do you approach something like that? I mean, because how do you convince people who are like starkly benefiting from something like bribery, and they're loving the golf clubs and the trips to Italy, and this is kind of something that a lot of politicians are have their hand in. How do you convince them to change that?
Yeah, so
Can you?
we're in one of the few states, unfortunately, that also has no public ballot initiative referendum mechanism. And this is why we're one of the few states without a gift ban. And I would say our biggest tool to kind of make them force the change is shame. We have great different institutions, journalists, writing about this. Spotlight PA does a really good job writing on the gifts that different legislative officials accept. And so we need legislators to know that we across the state are paying attention. We see what they're doing. We see what they're accepting. And we need to keep up the pressure. And the pressure is both contacting them with breadth, across the state, calling, writing letters, sending emails saying we support a gift ban. But it's also, we do a lot of direct actions, including billboarding, where we will sometimes go to the fundraisers of these elected officials and hold signs out front and say, like, so-and-so accepted like X amount, so-and-so is hosting this fundraiser for these people. We're just trying to keep up that information and that public pressure 24/7.
Yeah, and I don't want you to give away, the secret sauce on this, but I am curious, how do you come across the spending data of some of these corporations or businesses that are funding the gifts?
It's tricky because one of the main things is that a lot of them are kind of funneled through kind of sneaky ways to do it. Well, first of all, they are required to disclose when they receive gifts. But if you look at what's actually disclosed by legislators versus what, private companies disclose what they gift, it's like way off. So we have journalists that go through this like data, comb through it, pull out the discrepancies and publish that. But then when it comes to campaign finance, what we found is that, for example, Jeffrey Yass, who is like Pennsylvania's Elon Musk, he donates more. He's a billionaire. He donates more to pretty much every single election than any other person. He has a PAC, Students First, because he's really into privatizing public education. He's really pro charter school. So he uses his PAC, Student First. Students First then donates to a nonprofit called the Commonwealth Children's Choice Fund. The Commonwealth Children's Choice Fund then donates to a PAC called the Commonwealth Leaders Fund, which then donates money to public officials that are pro-school choice. And so you follow this train of money, and it's really all Jeffrey Yass.
Yeah, just washing the money over and over and over again.
Yeah, and he puts like the names on it like choice and leaders and students first, when it's really like he wants to privatize the public education.
How have we seen that influence play out in Pennsylvania politics, from golf clubs to laws being passed?
So Pennsylvania has a regressive tax structure. That means the higher up you go, the like less taxes you pay, the more money you make. And so that's like one super clear example of like, because they're able to give unlimited gifts, basically give all of this campaign money through these backdoor alleys, they're working to get a tax system passed that benefits themselves, to which then they keep more money, which then they can donate more money to the campaigns. So if we had a progressive tax structure where like the more money you make, the more you pay, that would at least curb some of the influence financially. But it's this cycle of like, they give the money to like get laws passed their way, to then keep more money and then keep going.
Man, so is there any progress in like getting, doing away with this for good? I mean, you said we're one of 3 states. How did the other states get rid of it?
So a lot of them have like public referendum mechanisms. And so we're really fighting this uphill battle. We've got to convince the legislators to do it themselves. And there is some progress in the sense of there are 3 different gift bans introduced in both gift ban bills introduced in both chambers right now. Rep Solomon, Rep Webster, and Senator Baker have each introduced different varying levels. And March on Harrisburg's stance is that we want any gift ban passed. We meet with every single legislator in both the House and the Senate, Republican and Democrat, and we ask them to sign on to a gift ban pledge. And some offices say like, oh, we don't sign pledges. Some are like 100%, we support and we're behind it. But what really needs to happen is Senate and House leadership, Joe Pittman in the House and then Kim Ward in the Senate, they are the leadership and they have to introduce it. So we're working on getting some billboarding in Westmoreland County, which is Kim Ward's district, and Indiana County, which is Joe Pittman's district. So like in the Pittsburgh area, we're going to show up with signs, show up at those fundraisers, like say, this is common sense. The people need this. And that's one really easy way to get involved.
Wouldn't you just be like shivering in a corner if, you were one of these companies and, like next thing you know, your business is out there saying you like flew somebody out to like the Bahamas or something? Like, I'd be like, okay, maybe I need to chill. Maybe I'm not going to do that again. Or even the politicians, like we're literally watching you. Like we see you.
We can see, and they just like have no shame. Like people have gotten like really expensive Beyonce tickets. Like people have gotten just like a lot of tickets. We're like, maybe I'll run for office.
That'd be really hard for. I'm like, wait, should I? Maybe I know. I'm kidding. I wouldn't. I don't think. But love Beyonce. But yeah, even Beyonce. That's how it's. Come on, like even Beyonce. We cannot make the case for that, even if it's for a Beyonce ticket.
Yeah, and that's why we take on a really like nonpartisan approach of like everybody in the Pennsylvania legislature is guilty of this. Like it's bipartisan. It's Democrats. It's Republicans. We have Democrats and Republicans that have like no gift like policies in their own, you know, offices. And so we're treating everybody equally because money talks to everybody and everybody listens.
Yeah. And so what do you think politics could look like without this dark money, you know, filtering through the system?
Yeah. So like sometimes when we're meeting, we kind of ask ourselves, like, when the revolution comes, what's the first thing you're looking forward to? And the answers are like free healthcare, better public transportation, better infrastructure, trains, you know, like having these things that we take for we don't have, so we can't take them for granted, but that other countries have because they have systems in place that inhibit the ultra wealthy from shaping all of their elections. So when we get dark money out of politics, it's getting that money out and putting that people in. And you start to see laws that get passed that serve the needs of the many rather than the needs of the few.
Yeah. And so what do you want us to be doing? Who are we calling? Who are we writing? Who are we Instagram? Like what do we need to be what's our action here?
Yes. So check out our website, giftban.org. You can read through, you can take a look at our toolkit, which has some like easy kind of templates to send an email. You can also sign up, you know, for our newsletter, and that's the best way to kind of get plugged into programming. And then, you know, we say like everybody has a different role in the movement. You know, you might be a person like, I hate canvassing, but I'm happy to call. I hate calling, but I will show up in that fundraiser and I will crash it. So whatever you're comfortable with, like we are doing all of it all of the time, and we need all hands on deck.
Okay. And is there anything we didn't touch on? Now I want to know. Now I want to go like do some Googling, like who has been donating money? You know, I want to know. Is it anything we didn't touch on that you wanted to talk about?
I don't think so. I guess I would just say like all of these things are intertwined and they're never kind of one at the time. You know, sometimes it feels like, okay, we have to prioritize like this thing, but it's not like we need to be working on all of these things all of the time, regardless of who is, you know, leadership, whether or not the House and Senate are controlled by Democrats or Republicans. You know, the movement for gift ban, I think, started like 30 plus years ago in Pennsylvania. And now we've like really focused on like if the actions that have worked before have not worked, then we're trying new things. And there are lots of voting reforms, like in my intro, ranked choice voting is, you know, a change to the way that we vote, where you get to rank your candidates in the order that you like them. So it eliminates vote splitting. So like another thing we see is like people are getting elected to the state legislature with like 30% of the vote or less. And then those make candidates that are like easier to buy out because they're supported by less people. And ranked choice voting is a reform that changes that as well. But if you go to our website, you can see like our full 23-point platform. You can see everything that we're working on. Spotlight PA is a great, you know, news organization talking about these things. And so read, stay informed, and keep on showing up.
All right, cool. We're going to do our part. Thank you, Marin, for joining us this evening. I'm gagged. You got me at flights to Italy. I'm like, this is juicy. So
you're like, oh,
I'm like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, they vote their own salaries. They vote on their own salaries, and they all make over like $100,000. So
meanwhile, if you work for anyone, you're not allowed to do that. Like
correct.
you know, like I have a media background, and I was not allowed gifts, you know, for stories. Like that's a bit like big no. Like we are not allowed to receive gifts from any source for any reason at any time. Because of the influence that might have. So it's like if my like measly little, you know, news job can have some strict, you know, tough restrictions, like you as a lawmaker need to be having some guidance too.
Yeah.
On that.
Correct.
So, all right. Well, we're going to stay locked in. We're going to be watching what you do, Marin. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, you guys. So before we head over to our next guest, have you heard about this? This is breaking news about Senator Cory Booker, a Black man, just broke the longest speech record in the U.S. Senate and is still going as he talks against this Trump administration's harmful agenda. The record was previously held by a Republican senator who filibustered the Civil Rights Act in 1957 to uphold racial segregation. As we talk about the importance of having elected officials who will stand up and fight for our communities, that is what he was doing. And I'm interested to see what the final running time is on that speech. With that said, let's go ahead and welcome our next guest, our final guest this evening, Amanda Neatrour, who right now is running as a write-in candidate for Pittsburgh's City Council District 2. She's all about advocating for disability rights, racial justice, LGBTQIA plus rights, equity for women and girls, and caregiver support. She also has 2 sons and is the primary caregiver to her mother, who is living with Alzheimer's. Hi, Amanda. Sorry, we lost you at the top. I said, sorry, are you there? You got us?
Can you hear me?
Okay, we hear you now. Yes. That's all right. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. It was fun back there listening to the great conversations.
I know. I feel like I've learned so much, and I can't wait, to get into our conversation this evening as well. I mean, first of all, how long have you been campaigning? What has that been like for you?
Yeah, so I officially launched my campaign on January 13th, but really the campaigning kind of starts once you decide to run, right?
Yeah.
There's the lead up to the launch. So but I am a little bit newer to the race. I officially made my decision to run probably about 2 or 3 weeks before the November election. So the timing was very interesting for me.
Wow. And so first of all, what kind of issues have you experienced in regard to any of the things that we've been talking about this evening, whether it be ableism or what have you? What has your experience been like?
Yes, so because of the work I've done around disability rights and disability justice for a number of years, the ableism and the barriers to folks is probably one of the first things I noticed being on the campaign trail, especially going out there, door knocking, collecting signatures to get on the ballot. And number one, right, getting access to voters. So there really isn't a lot of organization around like bringing voters to the candidates. The candidates really have to get out there to the voters. So, unless you have the means to have someone go pick up people, right, and bust them into an event, there's no real structure. And that's something that I know I would love to see because, as a person who is a caregiver, who is a mom, right, people like me should not face those barriers in terms of time resources and trying to run for office because we bring so much value. But beyond, right, having to have the ability to walk up to someone's door, knock on their door, right? If you are a wheelchair user or if you're an individual that has some kind of physical disability that would stop you from doing that, then your ability to directly engage with those voters to get those petitions signed or to door knock are going to be greatly impacted, right, and restricted. And then even just collecting signatures. So when my ballot was challenged, right, resulting in me no longer being on the ballot, a number of them were a result of me having to defend folks who had, physical challenges, physical disabilities, either from just having surgery or having dexterity challenges, needing assistance to have their petition filled out. And I will say I was able to successfully revive many of those with affidavits. But again, just in watching some of these people physically struggle to fill out a paper signature, it was just glaring to me how this is a very clear barrier to participating in the democratic process. And something that we really need to look into. And what I have learned since is that there are states where electronic ballot petition signatures are becoming more of a reality. It's still not happening. I only read up on maybe 4 states or so, like Massachusetts, Arizona. I think they're looking into it. But that is something that I think we really should look into in Pennsylvania, because having a disability, having a physical challenge, whether temporary or permanent, right, should not stop you from participating and seeing a candidate that you want to see on the ballot. And those are just two glaring ones. I met a woman who had some vision challenges, and because of the work I do, I understood, how to make sure she had supports. But what if you have a candidate who doesn't know or understand, right, what it means to interact with someone with a disability, or, uh, and again, right, some of the challenges that could pose. So it's just clear to me, even before we even get to the voting booth, right, that we need some reforms. We need some reforms to make the process truly accessible, because right now it's not.
Yeah, and mind you, I mean, this is your background, right? Like this is your arena whenever it comes to advocacy. And so, how has that helped you? Do you think that sort of allowed you to approach this differently? Like if you didn't have that sort of background, and even your experience as a caretaker too, with your mom, do you think that that's helped you approach that and point out some of these issues, like, how is this person supposed to get out to vote and the sidewalk looks like this or whatever? How has that played a part in this for you?
Absolutely. So, first of all, just on a human to human, right, level,
Yeah.
I definitely feel it's been a strength for me just in interacting with folks. I have been very fortunate where many of the voters whose doors I knocked, I was there with a child, like a daughter, with a son, with a friend, and that in itself allowed me to be able to be with someone who is knowledgeable of them, is supportive of them. So, for instance, there was a couple in their 90s, and both were older, happened to be a little bit slower. Just not all 90s, right? Some people in their 90s a little bit more spry, right? But
Yeah.
this couple, the husband in particular, right, had some challenges, and so because I was there with their daughter, I was able to go into the home. I was able to be there and again, witness that the wife was asked to support the husband in signing this petition. But there is certainly, I think, a level of compassion and understanding, and also patience, that I think that I have, deep empathy that I have, and not just folks with who you could say have disabilities, whether acquired through age or otherwise, even other individuals who, there were some folks who were trans that I met who signed my petition, and knowing that because their name, quote, legally or on their voter registration is different from the name they're using now. That is knowledge that, because of the work I've done, I have. And so I'm aware, right? Okay. Um, and again, these are things that no one teaches you or tells you.
Yeah.
I just happened to listen and knew the aunt of this individual. So I was able to pick up on the cues and listen, and able to respect and affirm this person where somebody else wouldn't know, right? To ask questions, and to bring up the fact that, okay, so you have this name, and yet I need the one that matches your registration. What kind of barriers is that going to pose for that person, right? And wanting to participate, because maybe they don't want to be out to someone that their name is different and have that conversation.
Yeah.
So definitely my background, I am just hyper aware of
Yeah.
all the ways that, again, just supporting a candidate to get on the ballot, all of the challenges that people can face, and it's really stark and really eye-opening, and quite frankly, this is a conversation that needs to be had, and that's why I'm grateful to be here having it now.
Yeah, and I'm so happy that you're here too, so we can talk about this. And so with that, so you already have all of this, knowledge from your years and years of participating in this advocacy,
Yeah.
and then you are on the campaign trail as a politician, and you see and you have this lived experience, and meeting and talking to people and listening. And so with those things combined now, has that changed the way you approach campaigning and how you get to people? Is there anything that you've applied differently now with that in mind?
So I don't think my application has changed, again, just because the way that I've approached it and have been approaching it is just what I would have done. I
Yeah.
would say probably, though, what has changed is made me even more determined. So, you mentioned that I'm a write-in candidate now, and that is the result of, the petitions that were challenged, not being able to revive enough of them. So I ended up being short, basically two. So enough of them were challenged, and I was not able to defend or revive enough of them. So I ended up being short 2 signatures to have my name appear in the ballot. However, talking to voters, seeing some of the clearly inaccessible, the structural ways, right, that
Mm-hmm.
participating in the process is inaccessible. I was already running because of the fact that I know I'm bringing that perspective of we need someone who understands accessibility, universal design. We need someone who's a disability justice advocate in city council. We need someone who's gonna advocate for trans folks, right? Someone who will have that racial intersectional lens. However, I am running and fighting even harder because I know that this perspective is even more important than ever before. And if anything, running for office has made me aware of so many barriers
Yeah.
that people are facing, but also all the possibilities for how we can make participating in the democratic process much more accessible, which could, right, shock or lead to people actually being more engaged and caring more.
Mm-hmm.
All the ways that we need to be better about communicating with folks, what it actually means, the opportunities to better prepare people for running for office. And then also, too, the process is so convoluted and confusing.
Yeah.
There are literally like 5 lawyers who understand like election law and like the whole region or the state, because it is so confusing.
Yeah.
And we need to just make it plain language so that people aren't confused about how many forms they need to turn in, about
Yeah.
all of the barriers and restrictions regarding getting your signature on the ballot. Like, it should be accessible and easy for any person to participate, regardless of who they are, regardless of if they're a mom, regardless
Yes.
if they have to work several hours, right? Regardless if they have a disability or not. And, so I see not just the need for someone to run and to fight, but also all the opportunities that I hope that lawmakers and leaders take into account and make some serious and necessary reforms.
Yeah, and by the way, what is your personal connection to disability rights? Like, have you ever experienced a permanent or temporary disability in life?
Yes. Yes, I have. So I have actually have a number of disabilities. So I first got into disability rights work and advocacy when I worked for the city as the diversity and inclusion employment coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I actually, so I have mental health disabilities that I acquired through some really traumatic experiences. And it wasn't until I got to know and began to work with some other like really amazing disability rights folks that I was like, oh, I'm disabled.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
began to identify with that. However, just a year ago, I was formally diagnosed as autistic. So I am a member of a growing community of folks, especially women, and in particular Black women. And we are what is considered a late diagnosis or late diagnosed autistic individual. And late diagnosis is much more prevalent in women, especially women of color and Black women, because the model for being autistic is still very much centered on being a young, white, cis, boy. Like, that
Mm-hmm.
is still the model, right? Just like in most things healthcare related, we look at men, and in particular white men. Girls, and folks, assigned female at birth, right, we're still not talking about them as being autistic, them as being on the spectrum or being neurodivergent. It's happening more now, but we're still not looking at all the ways that Black children in particular present. And in my case, being a Black girl, all the ways that I have masked or learned how to integrate into society to survive or to fit in, which I've learned is actually has to do with how I was masking or covering what, if people had paid attention, would have been signs that I might be autistic. So it actually was because of my disability rights work and the incredible folks I knew who were, have autism, that I was like, you know what, there might be something there. And so I actually sought out testing on my own. And again, it's been really eye-opening just to see all the ways that I didn't realize I was disabled because of the way I was treated, even in masking and kind of hiding who I am. It's ableism is prevalent, especially when you're like me and you have what's called non-obvious or hidden disabilities.
Yeah, I mean, and do you think, was it scary, for you to approach that? I feel like in like professional spaces as well, especially politics, but you have a robust professional background as well, and so like that's got to be really scary to even think about approaching that, because then it's like, what am I supposed to do with this information? Because you don't want to be disqualified as a strong candidate for promotions or even just positions in general, and you're supposed to be seen as this like healthy leader, bulletproof thing. And I feel like humanity is, the idea of that isn't often granted sometimes in the workspace. And so I mean, how was that experience for you to put this putting this on the forefront and coming out with this?
Yeah, I love that question. So when I finally found out, or finally, I should say, got the diagnosis, because I knew it was literally like 2 weeks before I competed for Mrs. Pennsylvania.
Wow.
So, I mean, we're talking about me like 2 weeks before a state pageant that I had been preparing for such a long time. Now I'm going to get out there and be judged, going through an interview process with this new information about myself, preparing to go to Vegas for nationals, and then, like you said, running for politics. And I actually participated in a study, a report on looking at disability in the healthcare system, where for the first time, I very publicly talked about being autistic and what that meant for me in interacting with the healthcare system. And to your point, for someone like me who has been working with employers on, accessibility, supporting folks with disabilities, and also teaching about ableism, I'm even more aware of all the ways that people face structural and institutional ableism, not to mention the micro, like person to person, right? And all the ways that it harms folks. So I have this knowledge of like all the things that could happen to me that I might face. And it is scary. I'm not going to lie. It's very scary. It's very scary. I make the conscious decision when I talk about it to fight against the fear and fight against the many ways I know people could decide to treat me. The reason why I choose and have chosen to be open about it is, honestly, in some cases, I've been forced to talk about it because of my reaction to someone just flat out disrespecting me. And I'm asking clarifying questions. And I'm like, no, I'm asking clarifying questions because your questions make no sense to me. And this is why. But in other cases, I have chosen to because I know I have had platforms, whether it's running for office, being Mrs. Pennsylvania, serving on a commission, that other folks don't have. And I know that despite how scary it is, I have spoken up when others wouldn't or couldn't.
Yeah.
And so I feel a responsibility too, especially in this climate where on the national level, we have a director of health and human services who has openly talked about autistic people being a burden.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's really important for me to use the platforms to show people that, first of all, being on the spectrum is a spectrum. Being neurodivergent or neuroexpansive, which is an abolitionist term, it is a spectrum. Everyone with autism isn't like me. I want to be very clear about that.
Yeah.
And people say things like, well, you don't look autistic. Well, there's no way to look autistic, but it's scary and sometimes terrifying. I don't know how people are going to react. I also know, though, that because of my robust career and experience, I'm probably going to be better off and bounce back better than some other folks.
Yeah.
And, you know, we all deserve respect. And to get that respect, some of us, unfortunately, have to step up and be willing to take some of those hits if it means to continue to advance disability justice. So it is scary. It doesn't stop being scary.
Yeah, for real. I mean, what would you want to say to people, you know, who are also living with a disability right now, who might be thinking about, like, you know what, I got a really, you know, good idea on something, and I would love to bring this to the stage. I think I ought to run for, you know, for office, but I'm afraid to because I'm experiencing X, Y, or Z, you know, or even, you know, hey, like I really, this is my dream career. I want to do this. Maybe it's not politics. Maybe it's getting into pageants or, you know, whatever. But that fear is holding them back. You know, what would you want to say to those people?
Do it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, people who are going to be bigoted against you, people who are going to discriminate against you, they're going to do it anyway.
Right.
If you want to run for office and you want to make a difference, do it. Find your people, though. What's really cool about going on this journey is I've met other folks who have disabilities who have run for office. I have friends who are in office now who are disabled, who are autistic. Do it. Get involved. And also, you know, shout out to this incredible organization, Disability Lead. We in Pittsburgh are actually getting our own chapter, thanks to the support of the FISA Foundation. And that's going to be a wonderful organization that will help folks who want to serve on boards or go into office. There's a lot more people who are openly supporting and talking about that community of folks. Like, find your people, but do it. Don't let these barriers hold you back, because it takes folks with certain lived experiences to step up to say, this is wrong. This is wrong. This needs to be changed. This is how we can be more inclusive. You know, I'm doing it, and it hasn't been easy, but I'm doing it. And I hope that I can inspire other people who are afraid to step up because of how they're treated. You're going to help somebody. And to me, that's worth it. So if you're thinking about it, just do it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And by the way, we got to ask, how is your campaign going?
Yeah, great, actually. I know. I have a new campaign manager. So that's really exciting. And the truth is, funny enough, there's so much more momentum now with everything that has happened. The community, there's so many folks in the community who are behind me. Like I said, all of those folks who signed my petition, including some of the ones that were dismissed, those were all real humans who did sign and wanted to see me on the ballot. And I love meeting folks. I love talking about the issues that matter, you know, around caregiver support, youth support, senior support, housing, you name it. And I'm just grateful for this opportunity. I'm grateful to do things like this and talk about my experience, because I know that I'm changing lives just even by doing this. So I'm actually in a really great place.
Good. That is very good. Hey, look, we love what's the common limit? I love good news. I love good news. Yes. Oh, you know, I put this, I stored a mental note earlier, but I forgot. With, you know, we were talking earlier with one of our previous guests about just sort of the fears surrounding cuts to Medicaid and services and things like that. You know, you're a caretaker. You know, do you have any concerns about what that might look like for you caring for your mom right now?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We've already gone through the spend down, which is where if your parent has any assets, you have to spend down their assets because so they can qualify for Medicaid.
Mm-hmm.
And we've already done that. And that means that my mother, because she does have Alzheimer's, the disease will progress. She progressed beyond, what the new treatments that have come out can do for her. So that is happening. Her deterioration is happening. And I have a very real fear of what will happen now when she gets to the point where I can no longer care for her, because that is inevitable. And if they take away that financial support, I will not have the resources to care for her in the way that she needs and deserves. So that is something that is on the top of my mind every single day as I watch the dismantling of these institutions. As your previous guest said, this impacts everybody. I don't have Alzheimer's. I don't need Medicaid yet. However, we're talking about my life, the life of my children, because my mother lives with us, and everyone else, who out there who's relying on this support, who had this promise that they'd be cared for, and now they're taking it away. And I just hope whoever's in charge somehow, some way, gets some compassion, gets some sense of humanity, and that these are human beings that they're impacting, not just dollars and cents.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, excuse me, that's a perspective that you might be bringing to the table on council. We don't know yet. How can we stay in contact with you and keep tabs on what you have going on?
Yes. So my website, amanda4pgh.com. And also Amanda4PGH is my Instagram. I'm also on Facebook, Amanda Neatrour for City Council. Very active on social media. And so those are just some really great ways. And if you see me, if you're in Pittsburgh and you see me out and about, say hi. Send me some positive vibes. But yeah, those are all the ways that you can follow all the things that I'm doing.
Perfect, Amanda. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening and sharing your perspective. I know I probably kept you a little. I have the tendency just to keep asking questions. I'm just like locked in. Like, well, tell me about this. Tell me about this. So sorry if we kept you too late. Have a good rest of your evening, and hopefully we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much for the conversation. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. Likewise. See you soon. All right, guys. Well, thank you to all of our guests who joined us this evening, and thank you for watching. Today we talked about a lot of different policies that impact people's lives. And the one way that we know we can impact policy is with our vote. As you know, there's a primary election happening on May 20th. So make sure that you are registered to vote and that your registration is updated and current. The last day to register to vote before the election is May 5th. The last day to apply for an absentee or mail-in ballot that may be received by the County Board of Elections is May 18th, and then Election Day, May 20th. We know that the State of the Union is really concerning, and so we want to remind you of how elections are going to impact you. Remember, you have the power. People, go out and vote, and make sure that you take note of all of those dates that we just mentioned. There's a lot of deadlines coming up. All right, that's it for tonight, folks. Hope you enjoyed watching. I know that we enjoyed these conversations. Again, my name is Royce Jones, and I'll see you next week.
Hey everyone, it's Miracle, host of Brunch with the Black Man.
These people intend to kill me, keep me in prison.
I am so happy to announce we have season 2 of Brunch with the Black Man.
And I could never understand why my heart would race and my hands would get sweaty.
So make sure you join us as we go on this journey with Black men as they heal themselves, talking about their own journey as we eat to feed our souls.
All of my brothers have been in jail, and 3 of them have been in prison. You know what I'm saying? Of course, I've been in jail as well.
Join us for season 2 of Brunch with a Black Man.